Alright guys, so today we're going to experiment with a little bit different kind of video. What I am going to be doing is condensing the video so you guys don't have to sit through 30 minutes to see what we end up with. And I'm going to start completely from the beginning, from chainsawing a blank out of a log and then carving the whole thing. My log today is a piece of holly we actually cut down when we moved into my house. So this is a kind of a special chunk, and we'll see what we end up with. One will be sawing out a blank with my little electric chainsaw. So this is the blank we're going to work with, and this will be an end grain bowl. It's got some cracks in it, but I think actually that's just going to make for a prettier bowl. So we'll get it clamped down, and we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so now I've got everything clamped into place. We're working on an end grain holly bowl again, and what I'm going to start off with is flattening the top with my turboplane. It's mounted on an 11-inch or an 11-amp 4.5-inch DeWalt grinder, and we're going to take the turboplane, flatten everything out, and start hollowing a bowl. I flattened the top surface. It had kind of a funny slant to it, but the bottom was pretty flat where I chainsawed it. Now I'm going to start hollowing out the center to make a bowl. Alright guys, so after all of that hollowing, here's what we've got so far. This is end grain, so it's super tough, but that's okay. So my next step on this bowl will be taking the turboplane, and what I'm going to do is knock off all the bark and surface on the side so we get bare wood rather than dirt and buildup and stuff like that. So that'll be my next step. Alright, so now we've cleaned all that bark off. You guys can see, look at all the color in this holly. It is actually laid in the log pile and spalted since we moved in almost 4 years, about 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, so it's laid in the log pile and spalted for 3 years and built up all this beautiful color. And once it gets sanded and polished up, it's going to be amazing. And that is actually going to be my next step. So what I'm going to do is switch over to the sander. Okay. So our next step will be sanding, and for that I just use an orbital sander typically. I've also got a Dremel over there with a flap wheel, and I'll use that to get the inside of the bowl if it's especially tricky. So what I'm going to take right now, and I'm actually in the shade, and I'm sorry for that, but I think that'll be okay for this first attempt at a video like this. So I've got 80 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to sand the whole thing at an 80 grit, and we'll see what we get from there. And it'll start shaping up and looking more and more like a bowl. So here we go. So where the internal profile of this bowl is a little bit difficult to deal with, what I am actually going to do is I will end up switching to my Dremel, and that's just because I made it kind of oblong and went with the shape of the stump rather than forcing it to be round. So right at the end I'll sand out the bowl with the Dremel. I'm going to switch to a different piece of 80 grit and do the outsides and the bottom there now.
So that is now sanded all the way down to an 80 grit, and as you guys can see, that takes forever. And now I have 2 more grits to go. I'll go through the 120 grit and the 220 grit, and then give it a final hand polish with a 320 grit sponge. So I'm actually going to cut the extra sanding out of the video because I want to keep this video kind of short. But what I will do is show polishing the inside with the Dremel next. So what I have here is just a standard Dremel 3000, and I've got a flex shaft attachment on it and a 120 grit flap wheel, which I'm going to use to do the inside of this bowl. And if you guys will look, the inside of the bowl looks pretty rough right now. When I'm done, it'll look a lot better. So we're going to give it a polish with the Dremel and go from there. Alright guys, so now I've polished out the inside, and I went and hit every one of these branch inclusions because they're a little deeper than the other sander likes to go, so they'd be nice and smooth. Now I'm going to sand with a 120 grit and a 220 grit and give it a final hand sand with a 320 grit sponge. So you saw me card this one from the beginning, and now it's all sanded out, and it has had 30 seconds in the microwave to make sure that any residual fungus is zapped, which I don't think there will be any, but if there was, it's zapped now. And so now my favorite part, we're going to oil it. And where it's kind of white and pale right now, all of this color is going to come out and pop, and it is just going to be beautiful. So what I'm using is culinary walnut oil, the Spectrum brand, because it is the cheapest locally available walnut oil I've found, and found it over at Earth Fair. So I'm going to pour some in the bowl, and I'm going to take my handy dandy cloth and just start wiping it all over. And then I'll give it, 15-20 minutes to soak in, come back and rewipe it, and show you a final view. So we're going to start inside the bowl. I'm just going to wipe this around. Now, because this is an external spalt, I've just left it out in the firewood pile and let it spalt. It is going to darken significantly, so it is going to go from this nearly white to gray or even black, which will actually, I think, look really cool because it has all of this orange inside it. Look how different that looks already. And once it's not so shiny, it'll look even better. So we get this poured in there, and I'm going to continue to walnut oil all around it. Now it's an in-grain bowl. So it is going to drink a lot of oil, but that is okay. Look at that change. It's just amazing. I want to make sure I get plenty down in those little crevices where branches have been and stuff like that. We just want to make sure some oil hits every surface. And since it's going to have a new home inside, I don't think that rot is going to be a big concern or anything like that, but the oil will just help it fight off moisture. Because living inside and the moisture changes that can cause is what causes wood to expand and swell and crack and all of that stuff. That being said, because this is already cracked on its own, it's had time to kind of acclimate and be through hot and cold and rained on and snowed on and everything else, I think that it is in a happy final state. So there is that. Yeah, look at that. Alright. A little more. I feel like Bob Ross, happy little trees, happy little walnut oil. Get it all polished in. That knothole is thirsty. And that's, I think, the cool part about making stump bowls like this, the in-grain. Even though they take a lot longer to sand, the carving is a little harder on the tools and everything as well. But in the end, man, they are beautiful. And they just look, so very natural in and of themselves. So, you got something that doesn't look like
oh hey, this guy turned this into a bowl. It looks like something, oh man, I was walking along the trail and I found this. Look at this beautiful natural bowl in it. And I really love that effect that creates. I think that it is just absolutely spectacular. Alrighty. Just like that. Get this side, and then I'll kind of show it to you guys in this state, and then, like I said, I'm going to let it soak in for, I don't know, 15-20 minutes. Probably go carve something else or work on something else while that's happening, and then I will show you guys the end result. And it's got this deep crevice in it, so I am actually going to give that its own pretty hefty drink of walnut oil because I want it to be happy. Alright, let's see. A lot of this you'll see me rubbing it with my hands. As I am doing that, the other big thing I am looking for is if I missed a spot sanding or anything like that, this will find it and I'll know to go back and wet sand just a little bit right there because we don't want any rough spots on our finisher bowl. We want it to be nice and smooth. Just rub in the rest of the oil that's poured through. Another advantage, by the way, of heating it in the microwave is that it just lightly heats up the oil and it helps it absorb. So it gets nice and deep in here. Alright, so look at the difference in that. Just one little coat of oil makes. All the orange in it. Man, that's beautiful. And again, that is spalted holly. Alright, so maybe this 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to dry out and let the oil kind of evaporate and soak in, and then I'm going to come back and I will show you guys what the end result looks like. So here's the end result of that spalted holly end grain bowl. As you guys can see, while it was drying, I went out and carved something else. Look at all the color that came out in that. Man, it is beautiful. So hopefully you guys really enjoyed watching the video, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. I love questions. And if you love it, inbox me and it could be yours. Thanks.